What is happening, gods and goddesses? It is the Keep It 100 podcast with the one, the only Hollywood AJ. Today, I will be giving you my UFC 271 predictions. The big fight this Saturday, the rematch between Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker. They are having a rematch from their first fight back at UFC 243 in October 2019. I will also be giving my predictions for the co-main event, that being Derrick Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa, the casuals main event, the people's main event, the Nelk Boys main event. I'll be giving my prediction for that big heavyweight co-main event as well as another big middleweight fight, possibly a title eliminator, between Jared Cannonier and Derrick Brunson. So those are my three big fights that if you want to go for the same guys who I'm going for or who I think will win, I'll help you win some money. Now, I don't have a DraftKings parlay or anything like that, but I'm telling you, these three are the guys that you definitely have to bet on. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about my weekend. It was pretty good. Spent a lot of time with my daughter, did a little bit of writing in my journal. I like writing my journal. Helps me really see and gauge where I'm at in life. And, it's just really good for the mind, really good for the soul, regardless if you write down one or two words. Still trying to crack the Biggie Smalls Tupac case. More videos on that in the future. And I'm wearing my Tampa Bay Buccaneers Super Bowl hat because it was a year ago today that the Buccaneers defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 31-9. My all-time favorite Super Bowl, more than the Denver Broncos beating the Panthers, more than Tom Brady coming back from 28-3 to beat the Falcons. It is just one of the best Super Bowls in my mind, mainly because Kansas City was so hyped up, and then for Tampa Bay, a 44-year-old man, to come in and silence all those critics, all those Mahomes fans, all those Kansas City fans, was truly something special to behold. But now, let's get into business, down to business. Let's go over Jared Cannonier versus Derrick Brunson. It's a big fight. Derrick Brunson has rejuvenated his career. He was kind of a journeyman at first when he came into the UFC. A lot of people didn't really think he was going to be in the upper echelon of the division. But I see him racking off wins against Edmund Shabazian, against Darren Till, against guys that are up-and-comers, and against guys that should be beating Derrick Brunson. But he's proven he's not no pushover. You know what I mean? Derrick Brunson is truly something special to behold. He kind of hit that second win in his career a la Vitor Belfort, a la Robbie Lawler. And if he could get past Jared Cannonier, then who knows? Maybe he could be next to challenge for the title. Whereas Jared Cannonier is definitely the dark horse in the middleweight division. I feel if Israel Adesanya wasn't a middleweight, then I believe Jared Cannonier would be our champion. Now, I know Robert Whittaker beat him, but those would be the two best middleweights right now on the planet if Israel Adesanya was in any other division. But Jared Cannonier has been kind of going up and down. He did win his last fight, but this is a fight that, is going to truly see where both of these men are at, not only in the division, but in their careers, because both of them know, I can't be doing this much longer. They're kind of long in the tooth, so who can really make a statement to get the champion's attention? Whoever the champion will be at night's end, who will be the possible number one contender? I know you got Sean Strickland in his big win this past weekend against Jack Hermanson. But these two guys, they've been around longer than Sean Strickland. They have name value. Derrick Brunson has become a meme in the MMA community with his posture figure showing off his abs and lats and things like that. So he's one of my favorite fighters, turned into one of my favorite fighters. But this is going to be a tough fight. I feel like it's going to be a war. I feel like it's going to be a slugfest almost, and has a potential to be fight of the night, possibly steal this show from the main event in the evening. But I don't know. I don't know if Jared Cannonier has the ability to finish him. And I don't know if Derrick Brunson is going to use his wrestling similar to what he did against Edmund Shabazian and Kevin Holland. And Kevin Holland's another big win for Derrick Brunson because Kevin Holland is the new up-and-coming contender, and Derrick Brunson just ragdolled him like nothing. However, I do think Jared Cannonier has the power advantage because let's not forget, this man used to fight at heavyweight. He fought at heavyweight, he fought at light heavyweight, and then he fought at middleweight. He beat Anderson Silva, one of the greatest fighters of all time, and he was on a tear before he ran into Robert Whittaker. I think he's going to have a bounce-back year. 2021 was an okay year. 2020, not so great of a year for Jared. I think he's going to have a bounce-back year, and I see him winning this fight via split decision. That's right. I feel like Jared drops him a few times, controls the wrestling, gets a few takedowns of his own, close to a finish, but not quite there yet. So I think Jared Cannonier wins via split decision. It's going to be close because Derrick Brunson, he's not the type that's going to take a knee for anybody. So I have that being a split decision win for Jared Cannonier. Now, let's move on to the co-main event. Now, these three fights are back-to-back-to-back, so we're ending off the night really well. We got Derrick Lewis, one of the most famous UFC fighters in today's modern era, against Tai Tuivasa, who's become a fan favorite since his inception into the UFC back in 2017. Both of these guys are two of my favorite fighters in the heavyweight division. And I believe this is a great step up in competition for Tai Tuivasa because he's been on a tear. He's been defeating guys. He defeated Augusto Sakai in his last fight. He defeated, who did he beat? He defeated Greg Hardy at UFC 264. Shirt I'm wearing right now. I don't know if y'all can see. Anyway, that's the shirt I'm wearing. But he defeated Greg Hardy in a fight I did not think that Tai would win. Here's the biggest thing, though. The moment Tai had to step up in competition, that was when he fought Junior Dos Santos in December of 2018. He lost. And not only lost, but he lost terribly. And ever since then, he's been fighting unranked, mediocre guys, whom I thought wouldn't really get Tai to where he wanted to be in the upper echelon of the heavyweight division. Derrick Lewis, on the other hand, that guy he's, no pun intended, he's a beast. Even though that's his nickname, the Black Beast, he is that in every sense of the word. But it seems like he can never win the big fight. Let's not forget he fought Ciryl Gane for the interim title in his backyard. Now this fight is in his backyard of Houston, Texas, and he came up incredibly short in that fight. Then he came back and fought Chris Daukaus and landed up knocking him out in spectacular fashion. But this fight right here, as I said before, is the people's main event. It's the casuals' main event. It's the Nelk Boys' main event. This fight could be a main event on a fight night, but no, they decided to put it on a pay-per-view, and I absolutely love that idea. But as I mentioned, both of these guys can't seem to win the big fights, but Tai can't seem to win the true big fights. I do not see this fight going to a decision at all, and if it does, then don't watch this podcast again because I don't know anything about fighting. But please keep watching this podcast so that way you guys can get amazing content week in and week out. My point is like I said, Tai couldn't win the big fight. He couldn't win that fight against Junior Dos Santos. So he had to take a step back in competition per se. That's not taken away from many of the guys he's beaten. But at the end of the day, Derrick Lewis has more experience. He has the most knockouts in UFC heavyweight history. The most knockouts. Tai is a knockout artist of his own. This fight is not going the distance. But with that being said, I feel like Derrick Lewis just hits harder. Where Tai, he kind of has to wait for the opportunity to get that knockout. All right. And at the end of the day, at the end of the night, I have Derrick Lewis winning a pretty quick first round KO. And who knows, maybe if everything goes right with Francis and Francis stays in the UFC, this could be another title eliminator in the heavyweight division. I know you got Stipe and I know you got John Jones. There's rumblings that they're going to be fighting here this year. But I do think Tai Tuivasa and Derrick Lewis is going to be a big fight that a lot of people are kind of sleeping on. But Derrick Lewis, first round KO, and I think Tai's going to have to fight it. It's just not his time yet. He's young. He will be back. I like him personally, but I just think Derrick Lewis is back to being Derrick Lewis. And he could have been the interim champion, and he could have fought Francis Ngannou in the rematch a few weeks prior, but I think it's Derrick Lewis's time, and I think he's going to get the job done via first round KO. Write that down. Take a picture. I don't give a fuck. Then we got our main event of the evening. 5 rounds of fighting for the UFC middleweight championship as Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker fight again for the first time in 3 years. Their first fight was at UFC 243 back in October of 2019, which feels like it was 10 years ago. Now, I knew Adesanya was going to win that first fight because he was just on cloud 9. Robert Whittaker hasn't fought in such a while at that point. His last fight up until that first Israel Adesanya fight was in June of 2018. I mean, that guy's almost as injury prone as Anthony Davis, it seems like. And he could be the Anthony Davis of MMA, of the UFC. And Israel made it look easy in that very first fight. He just outclassed Robert Whittaker. And Robert didn't seem like he didn't know what to do. He saw the Kelvin Gastelum fight, and Kelvin Gastelum was the only one that had true success against Israel Adesanya up until the Jan Blachowicz fight. More on those two fights later and how Robert is banking on those fights to help him win this fight. But he didn't know what to do. He rushed at Israel like he was an amateur, like he was a wrestler, and Robert Whittaker is not a wrestler. And Israel was just able to evade. He was able to use his distance very well. His upper body dexterity is second to none. His ability to dodge punches, high kicks, it's just something special to behold. His kickboxing background is what made him a UFC champion and one of the best UFC champions of our time. Now, Israel got the second round knockout in that first fight, made it look totally easy. And Jon Anik said, this could be the first fight in a chapter that is not likely to end anytime soon. And I agreed. I agree with that. And I did think that they would fight again if Robert racked up a few more wins. And he did. But let's look at who they were against, all right? He fought Darren Till in July 2020. Darren Till doesn't take fighting serious anymore. I'm sorry. I like Darren Till. But that guy, he can't win a fight to save his life anymore. And two, he let that title shot against Tyron Woodley go to his head and thought he was this hot MMA fighter, like the next Michael Bisping, and hasn't put a string of wins together in such a long time. I think he's only won one time in the past 3 years, and that was against Kelvin Gastelum, and it wasn't his true self. So he beat a Darren Till that simply doesn't take fighting any seriously. He doesn't take fighting any seriously as more as he used to. And I thought Darren Till actually won that fight. Of course, Robert Whittaker dropped him. But again, it was against a Darren Till that doesn't take fighting serious anymore. Then he fought Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier stood in front of Robert Whittaker, and Robert Whittaker did whatever he wanted to do. He was just using his jab and head kick. That is his number one punch that Israel Adesanya saw from miles and miles away. So he defeated a stationary Jared Cannonier. Then he fought Kelvin Gastelum. They were supposed to fight for the title at UFC 234. Robert had to pull out the day of the fight, and therefore that was it. Robert's fate was sealed for that rest of 2019. So he fought Kelvin Gastelum and put on a clinic. He wrestled Kelvin, but Kelvin didn't fight like his normal self, I thought. He didn't fight the way that he fought Michael Bisping, like he fought Jacare, like he fought Israel Adesanya for that matter. He fought a guy that was basically a shell of himself in Kelvin Gastelum. I'm not taking anything away from those guys. I'm just looking at the facts. He fought Darren Till, who doesn't take fighting serious. Jared Cannonier, who fought extremely stationary against Robert. And I feel like if he used a lot more footwork and a lot more angles, he probably would have beat Robert. And then he fought Kelvin Gastelum, a guy who's become a shell of himself. And like Darren Till, has not been able to put a string of victories together. And that's what leads to this title shot. And since then, Israel Adesanya has been on an absolute tear as well himself. He defeated Yoel Romero in one of the worst fights in UFC history. Don't watch it. I'm just saying, as a casual, you will not like it. Then he defeated Paulo Costa in one of the biggest middleweight fights I can remember, aside from Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva. Then he fought Jan Blachowicz after that Paulo Costa fight, defeated Paulo via second round TKO. But then Paulo Costa defeated him via unanimous decision. Last 2 rounds, Israel kind of fatigued. Jan was able to use his heavyweight body, because let's not forget, Jan fought that fight as a heavyweight, to be able to take down Israel and control him for the better part of 2 rounds and retained his light heavyweight title. Israel suffered his first loss ever in the UFC and in MMA. He bounced back with a nice win against Marvin Vettori, a win that I thought Israel needed. It was similar to when Max Holloway fought Dustin Poirier for the interim lightweight championship, but then came back and fought Frankie Edgar and truly won. So now we're back to this collision course that Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker are on. I do not believe Robert Whittaker will win this fight. I do not think that he has a hope. He doesn't have a prayer. There is no way on God's green earth that Robert Whittaker defeats Israel Adesanya. And here's why. In their first fight, leading up to that fight, he saw things that Kelvin Gastelum used that could help potentially defeat Israel, which was pressure and wrestling and looping overhands that actually caught Israel. How did that first fight turn out, though? Robert got his face smashed. Bobby Knuckles got the knuckles put on him. and Israel stole his belt in his backyard. And now in this fight, Robert's saying that Jan Blachowicz laid down the blueprint to defeat Israel. Okay, as I mentioned before, Jan is basically a heavyweight come fight night. Robert walks around at a solid 195, I'd say, on fight night. Israel walks around at a solid maybe 185, walks around at middleweight. But at the end of the day, Israel is not Jan. He doesn't have the size of Jan, and he doesn't have the wrestling credentials of Jan Blachowicz. And we saw in the first fight that he cannot touch Israel. So there's just simply no way that Robert's going to beat him. He tries taking him down. Israel defended those takedowns like he did against Marvin. And we saw that, boom, just like that, Israel Adesanya just can't be beat, and he won't be beat. And especially against the guy that he demolished before. I just think Robert is not on Israel Adesanya's level. And if Israel Adesanya was in a different division, like Jared Cannonier, maybe Robert would still be the champion. But with that being said, I got Israel Adesanya winning second round TKO. Similar to the last fight, I think he's going to toy with his food. If Robert can get this fight to the ground or land something of nature that earns Israel's respect, then we'll have a fight on our hands. But I just don't see that happening at all. I just think that Israel Adesanya is just going to go out there, play with his food, and at the end, coming into the second round, he's going to hit him with something that Robert's never seen before, and Israel Adesanya retains his middleweight title. So there you have it. I got Jared Cannonier via split decision, Derrick Lewis via first round TKO, and Israel Adesanya via second round TKO. And I'm betting the house on Israel, so Israel better pull through for me. And I'm just truly excited. Finally got another UFC pay-per-view. It's been slow. They've been edging us. But now we're finally here, and I cannot wait. Thank you guys for watching. Please give me a like and subscribe. Comment who your picks are for this weekend's fight. Let me know who you're betting the house on, similar to who I am. And most of all, you guys, thank you so much for watching. And please give me ideas on videos you would like to see, whether it be podcasts, skits, vlogs. I am game for whatever. I will do it. It's your boy Hollywood AJ. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep it 100. I'm out.